Hi, you reached Hell's Gate. Today I'd like to talk about two military buffs, and most of these can be found in the Civilization Wonder Tree, and one of them is related to what's called the critical rate, and there's a critical rate for each of the four types of military troops: the siege, the archer, and here's cavalry, and then related to those, kind of coupled with them, there is the critical rate, and then there is the critical damage. And pretty much what it is that your critical damage is the potential increase in damage that your unit can provide, but then that has to be coupled with the rate of which that extra damage will be applied. So in this case, if we were to go to my personal star map here, I have a siege engine critical damage of a total of 50%, and that gets coupled with the critical rate of 1%. So I should, basically see, 1% times 50%. I guess theoretically that's, an extra 0.5% of power or damage. I think that's what it means. But pretty much among all the other stuff that you can pick in your Civilization Wonder personal tree, in addition to attack strength and damage, is this component here, which is some additional damage, and these percents get pretty high. Here I got 5 out of 10, so it's 50%. I can get up to a total of 100% if I get all 10 of these selected, and that gets coupled with a critical rate here. So why is this important? Well, I wanted to show some battle results as a result of this, and obviously I'm kind of limited with the Civilization Wonder in being able to choose and pick various selections of damages and critical rates. It'll be very expensive to be resetting my tree all the time. So there is one other location where you can go to check out the critical rates and critical damage, and that is in the Magic House, or the Magic Book. And in the Fire Magic, level 1 here, it shows that your critical rate is by 0.4% and a critical damage of 16%. And if you're able to get to Book 2, your rate increases to 0.7% and a damage of 36%. And I just happen to have 4 stars on this, so this rate's actually higher than what the base value is. And I just so happen to have the fire number 5 here. And this one's a pretty nice one. You get a critical rate of 1.6% and a critical damage by 90%. So what I've done, and I've already done these battles, is that I've done some tests. And pretty much what my tests were is that I did some trial and error on it, but I eventually found a battle that seemed to make sense, and basically I ended up attacking one of my farms, but I had that farm located on a resource, and so what I did is that I only sent out 20,000 of my T10 troops. Oh, this is not the right battle. Oh, no, it is. Okay, I'm looking at this wrong. Yeah, so so in this battle, I sent out 20,000 T10 cavalry, and you see here that 12,994 got wounded, and remained was the 7,006. Those two numbers total up to the 20,000, and these guys were able to kill 58,000 troops of my farm. And here's my farm, the defender, and here I just picked a whole bunch of troops that I happen to have. I have, when I see he's got the dark magic on here, but yeah, I got a whole bunch of T7s, T10s, T9s, a little bit of everything. Pretty much I try to put out as much as I could, and I think I had about 122,000 troops as part of that. So I had 20,000 going against 122,000, so a 6-to-1 ratio here, and here, if we look into the stats here, I only have one critical rate and one critical damage effective on here, and that is from the Wonder Tree itself, my personal Wonder Tree itself. I got the 1% and the 50%. I don't have any other critical rates in here, with the exception of maybe my infantry, but that's I have my Selma on my wall, so that shouldn't show up here either, and I'm not seeing it. So yeah, so this is the only critical rate here. So this is kind of my base value, is that I did the attack, I lost 106,000 power, and the farm that I attacked, they lost 374,000 power. So now, if I was to increase the magic book attributes, in which I did, my next attack is that I didn't bother with book level 1, I just went straight to level 2, because it's a more substantial increase. And you can see the power loss on my farm is a little bit bigger. It's minus 400,000. I wounded 61,000 troops. If I go back to my original one, I only wounded 58,000 troops and a loss of power of 374,000. So there was a slight improvement. And if we look at the attributes, here we go. We have to get infantry critical damage of 36%, at a critical rate of 0.1 or 1%. It's actually 0.7%, I believe, but they don't show decimals in here. And then here's the cavalry critical rate from the Magic Book level 2, 1% and 36%. Here it is for the archer, 1% and 36%. And now if you see here, my siege is now rounded up at 2%, and the damage is at 86%. It's the 50% plus the 36%. So there is a benefit of having an increased number on that. Now this next attack here is, I would call it an anomaly initially, is that I increased it to book level 5, and you would think that there'd be more power loss and more troops lost on my farm, but that's not the case here. And I noticed this while I was playing around with it, is that sometimes there would be some plus or minuses, and I think there is some randomness in the game of the critical rate being applied, and I try to minimize as much as possible by just using one type of troop, but sometimes you get inconsistent results. So here, this is actually, I think, a lower power than what it was with the base value. But here, if we look at the numbers, here's my critical rate of 2% and critical rate damage of 90% for cavalry. That should be the same for archer and the same for the infantry. But then, for the siege, I'm at a critical damage of 140% and a critical rate of 3%. But for some reason, the loss of troops and the loss of power is less. But I did another battle right after that with all the same troop configurations. And then here, they lost more troops. So they lost 63,000 troops and a power loss of 407,000. So, so there is a randomness to the effects of these battles. You don't always get the same number all the time. But obviously, by increasing your stats, you do have the potential of increasing the damage here. So again, here we are, 3% and 140%, the 2 and the 90. And so this is a loss of power again of 407 versus an identical attack at minus 327. And then using book 2, a loss of power of 400, which is almost as much as using book level 5. And then here, using no book at all, it's at 374 power, or loss of power. So here's kind of an explanation of what it does. Since these are critical rates applied in here, I think there is a little bit of randomness to the effect of how the troops attack. It's not consistent every single time, but you got various levels here in terms of critical damage of 90% at 1.6% versus book 1, which is at 0.4%, and a critical damage of 16%. So every bit helps. But the last point I wanted to make is that in the Civilization Wonder, there's all these upgrades to do, and in general, you can have these archer critical damages here, but if you don't have the corresponding rate to go with it, these kind of don't work. It's kind of pretty much saying it's my rate times 0. So you need to be able to upgrade your critical damages as well as your critical rates, and Some of them are easy to upgrade, but others you've got these kind of intermediate things to upgrade here, and here it costs quite a bit more resources to be able to upgrade that. So here you have the 7,500 sand just to increase it by one amount. Well, normally it's only 2,000, so it takes about a little more than 3 times more resources to get that. But then that gets us to the cavalry critical rate here, which is then coupled with this item over here. So even though we've already earned, I believe, 10% on this, or no, we've earned 70% on this one, since we don't have this one over here, this guy really is not effective yet. It's basically 0 times 70%. And if we can just get one of these, all of a sudden now we have 0.5% rate times the 70%. So that concludes this little scenario in terms of donations to the Civilization Wonder to be able to increase your attributes. And these two are coupled, and we need to be able to upgrade the critical rates in addition to the critical damage. So hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it explains a little bit. It also highlighted to me, I learned a little bit that the critical damage and critical rates, there seems to be a little bit of randomness to this. You don't always get good results. You get some really good results as a result of it, and other times the results are a little bit more flatter. But by having higher rates, you should be able to get higher damage on it as well. So that concludes this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And any comments, feel free to comment on my page. Otherwise, hope you like it, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thank you very much, and good night.